Hey Mike, good afternoon. How you doing, man?
Andres, I'm doing well, man. I've been watching some basketball with all the March Madness.
I can tell. What is that?
Well, this is a Cisco official basketball that I've got here to represent, you know, March Madness and basketball that's going on right now. Or got a couple teams left, and it's been fun to watch.
Make sure you get it signed by Chuck.
Oh, geez, great call. I'm so glad you said that.
Nice, man. So yes, it's been a while, I guess like a month and a half or so. And then I guess, with this new episode that we have going today, it is going to be interesting because it's going to be on identity, which is, and from my side, is a lot of the conversations that we've been having with customers. I've been hearing this term that the identity is the new perimeter, and
Yep.
it's not like a fun term anymore, or I don't know if it became like a marketing thing at this point, but yeah, we've been hearing about from customers about this. What have you heard about it?
Okay, so big thing for me, and I wasn't super shocked when I heard the following, but when I saw that identity is now the number one threat vector. So it used to be what? Email, protect your email. Well, obviously that's still super critical, but identity truly is statistically the number one most likely way for an organization to get hacked right now. And I know today we were going to talk a little bit about identity and just how important that really is.
Yeah, yeah, and some of like we're gonna make sure that we put some of the findings and some of the things that we've been looking into just to create the episode. We see a lot of articles created with some metrics, some information, some studies that have happened in the back end, and then I guess like the main thing is this thing, like the old network perimeter is gone and now is the identity is the control plane. So that is resonating with a lot of people out there, and that is something that we hear from many customers. We also hear credentials, sessions, and tokens, and those are the things that the attackers want, just to make sure that they have the option to unlock your app's data and even domain access.
Yeah. One of the terms that we keep hearing is IGA. And for anybody listening in, like you're going to hear about it now that we've said it, identity, governance, and administration. So that's become more critical than it ever has been. And identity, governance, and administration, just so everyone's on the same page here, it's not like a product, but that's really like a framework for how an organization is managing all the the user identities, and it's like the policy of those users and what they can access in terms of, hey, this user group has access to these devices or these applications, but it's how an organization manages the identities and how you can be compliant with your organizational standards. So IG, identity governance and administration, kind of a lot to say, but it has become really critical.
I'm gonna read into it. I was gonna say that it sounds like another security person doing policies and creating procedures for a lot of the things that we help our customers with. So yeah, I'll make sure that I read on it. We will make sure that we add it to the show notes just so that you can see exactly what it means, and then we will get over that at some point. Mike, another thing, trusted network. So we hear this from many of the products that we talk to about here at Cisco, and then there's one thing, like MFA is the thing. MFA is what you're supposed to have, but user is authenticated, then what? Like,
Yeah.
what do we do? Like, how do we, like, what's the next step? What do you think?
This has become like, you know, security is always staying one step ahead or at least in line with the attackers. So, in terms of a trusted network, it used to be, well, let's just make sure you are a trusted person on a trusted device. Great. Now we turn off our visibility. If you get hacked after that point that your trust was given, that's a serious problem. No one's keeping an eye on what your device is doing or the traffic. So we get into this concept of like continuous verification, continuous identity verification, periodic checks to make sure that your originally trusted session was not compromised. So So yeah, to your point, I mean, a trusted network is still important,
Yeah.
but I think security teams need to make sure that they are continuously verifying the trust level even after you gain that initial access.
Yeah, yeah, and that is one thing that that we keep seeing on those documents that we base the whole episode on today.
Yeah.
There is another term, another thing that I've heard also, and it's called phishing-resistant MFA. And then I'm gonna, kind of read some of the things that we have here is based on device trust, policy-based access instead on just relying on password strength alone. And I know we do talk about a product in a daily basis here at Cisco, and I don't know if you want to talk about it a little bit, Mike,
Yeah.
if you heard it, and yeah.
Yeah. I mean, of course, you're referring to Cisco Duo. So Duo, originally being an MFA product, it's so much more than MFA. And, neither of us are here to sell Duo on the call, but just to use Duo as an example of how a security product should be keeping up with more advanced threats. If we think about evolving from Duo's MFA capabilities to its capability to look at the device as well. So the health of the device. Is this a device that's a corporate asset? And Duo can do that. Duo can say, look, I'm going to check your identity, but also the device you're on. Like, part of this identity governance and administration is your identity, but also the device you're on. It's kind of like holistic. So passwordless is like a newish thing as well. So as attackers attack passwords, passwordless is become a great way to evolve with these attacks. So if you don't have a password, well, you can't really be vulnerable to a weak password in that case. So passwordless, as I'm sure we'll talk about more with using other alternative methods other than remembering your password is really important. And with any security solution, you got to keep up with the times. And if you think about even Cisco Duo, like back in the day, having MFA was alone was great and would stop most identity based attacks. But like you want to take a touch on maybe like what we call push fatigue, like MFA push fatigue, and
Yes, yes. And that is some of the modern identity attacks. We started seeing, and this is when we started seeing here at Cisco as an employee, like that we didn't have to just accept a push notification and that was it. We started seeing like a verify push with a code that we had to enter in the computer, and it just evolved into something else right now, that it is not only verifying that push, it is also verifying that, like the pass key that you have in your computer, like your fingerprint. I guess Windows does it with this thing called Windows Hello, which is your face or biometric print as well. But it is it is just the response from the security products on that alert fatigue, like craziness that, and I'm seeing it the other day. I started seeing like a bunch of my personal email, bunch of, hey, somebody's trying to log into your account, do you want to accept it? And then I have a number, and I don't even know what the number they're seeing is, the number that I have here. So in my case, what I've been doing for those, and gosh, I still get them from time to time, like at least one a day. I just denied the login. It just makes me feel a little better. Probably I have the password. I'll probably change it again, but I'll feel like more secure just because I have that security piece in place.
Yeah, when you get that message that's, hey, someone's trying to log in, is this you? And you're like, I'm not trying to log in. It's scary, especially if it's your bank account or something like that. But it's also like I get the feeling of I am so glad I have MFA on for this.
Yeah, yeah,
Hey,
yeah. I've been talking to my dad the other day. I was talking to him, and I was like, "Hey, I'm getting hacked," and he's like, "Oh, word! Like, let's go to a computer. Let's go fix it. Whatever you need to do." And I'm like, "No, I'm fine. It's they cannot access from whatever they are."
the verify, and our parents and their parents, those are the people most vulnerable as well. I mean, for one, if you just have basic MFA on there, that's susceptible, but they might not have MFA on at all. And they're used to, oh, I need to quickly change my password because my password got hacked. But when you've got that multi-factor, that additional step, that's really key here. Hey, have you heard of, or have you looked into the low energy Bluetooth push that Duo does now?
Yes, I think I've heard a little bit about it, but don't be honest with you, don't know much, but it looks like a really, really, really nice technology that, it just picks up that your device is close, I think, is what it is, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, you log into a website, your username and password's correct. The Duo push, essentially, the presence of your phone, your multi-factor device being physically close to the computer that made the request to the website is really what's happening there. So if you're an attacker, you're like, it's immediately gonna block that because they don't, unless they also have your phone right by the computer. I like solutions like that because it's very simple, like to the user. So I don't even need to be involved with this process if I'm being attacked. I mean, the attacker is on the other side of the world. I don't, I'm not even, don't even have to mess with this. And then when I'm the real person going to the website, cool, it just seamlessly worked because I have my phone right here.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I kind of knew a little bit on a high level what it would do, but that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool that we can do that. Another I want to I know we have like 3 bullet points on some modern identity attacks, but I'll probably take one and just group them all. Like we see token theft, and this is whenever an attacker makes sure steals your token or your session. And in this case, and I've been seeing these a lot in Instagram and TikTok and a bunch of other places, that they may be able to bypass MFA entirely. So this is one of the things to be aware of, that it's happening. I think on the same wavelength, we also see the OAuth abuse, and this is just adversaries, or they just legitimately use old workflows to just get into applications and get consent from the user, just to get some persistent access into whatever they're after. And then the other thing that it's like very close to the same thing is the session hijacker and hijacking. And this is just, attackers stealing those cookies and replay the tokens just to make sure that they are authenticated into your session. And I know I've seen a little bit of things about that, but that seems, very complex from what the attackers are doing. So from the sense of defenders or practitioners, this is one thing to keep in mind, that there are some things that are happening in the world. There are some ways that we're getting attacked, and we just have to be, smarter on how do we protect our assets, I guess.
These types of attacks, like session hijacking, token theft, things like that, those are things that a user should not have to be thinking about, and it's confusing. Like, what does that mean? My token is being stolen. So anyone listening, regardless of whether you're using Duo or not, you need a security product that, again, going back to our original point, is able to continuously verify. Because if you do have something happen with like a session getting stolen, that attack can persist across multiple devices and multiple systems. It won't be checked because that trust was assumed it was granted initially, then it got stolen, now it's being reused. But if we have continuous verification, we can kind of like recheck that we detected that session was stolen, is being reused. So when you're looking at an identity security solution, make sure it's not just doing that initial access.
That's a really, really good point, Mike. And then another thing that also happens just before we move into the next section is it's the privilege escalation. Like we see just attackers stealing identity, stealing usernames, passwords, and they just try multiple things. They just go into those computers, see if they can gain any access to the domain, like they can enumerate the actual users that are in the system. They can see maybe, this user that it's called admin, maybe it's an administrator or domain admin, then they can, start messing around with things. So that's very, very interesting. And of course, what you mentioned, Mike, authorizing a user once doesn't mean that the user should be authorized to access everything unless, we do some sort of verifications every few hours or whenever we see, like, I'm probably sitting here on my computer today, here in my house with the dogs, everything, and then I'm just gonna go to the next Starbucks and go drink a coffee. I think there should be, like, I'm changing networks, I'm changing my
Yeah.
IPs, I'm changing everything. So, it's more than acceptable just to make sure that I get re-authenticated or some way of knowing that, it's me the one in that Starbucks. That's
Yep.
always
Exactly. Well, so the first thing I think about is I love drinking coffee with you. I've probably had over 1,000 coffees with you in person at different events. So we do need to keep that in mind. We're always going to different places to have coffee. Yes, absolutely. And I'll touch on, you mentioned like the admin accounts. Like the attacker, I mean, if they can get a hold of an admin account, that's outstanding for them. It's going to have more access. And, that's really what we mean by privileged access or privileged escalation. We're talking about getting access to one of these accounts that does have pretty broad reach and can get into the really important devices and applications on our network. That's going to mean more money for the attacker if I can get access to like your precious data. And I'll tell you this, going back to our previous episode, if you guys haven't listened to the episode 1 of season 3 on zero trust, all of this really ties in well with zero trust because, like, your admin access, for example, you really want to limit the scope of what your user roles are doing. Admins should have access to the things and resources admins need to be an admin. That's going to be different from like your call center people or your contractors. So make sure that zero trust being like a larger topic. But, fundamental thing there is once you do verify that identity of that user, make sure you're only giving them access to the things that user should have access to and nothing more.
Exactly. Now, here's another maybe controversial section that we have here for everybody that it's listening and watching this. What, Mike, and now give back to you on this one and just, start with the question of where do you see most organizations fail when we're talking about securing their identity, securing, how people are authenticated into the system, and where do you see that happening?
Ooh, that's a good question because there are so many ways attackers steal identity. Okay, I'm not even going to say that it's because you don't have MFA because everyone should have MFA. And I'll tell you this, if you weren't aware of this, I'm speaking to the audience, the attackers are assuming you do have MFA at this point. When we started the show 3 years ago, we were talking about, hey, get MFA in place, make sure MFA is in place. At this point, they are assuming you have an MFA, and the attacks they are running are assuming that you have MFA in place, and they're looking for ways to bypass it. I would say, me personally, the push fatigue is a big one.
Yep.
I mean, just push fatigue, and then another one I want to talk about is social engineered attacks related to identity. But push fatigue, I mean, it's great for an attacker who can say, hey, look, you have MFA, and I'm just going to create a bot that just tries to log into this application and sends you an MFA push to your phone every 10 seconds. And a lot of these attacks happen at nighttime. They happen at nighttime and when people are the most busy. And attackers know that you are statistically more likely to go ahead and approve a push. Like, what is this that keeps happening? I need to deal with this later. I'm sitting down to dinner with more colleagues or my family. And those are the times that people are most likely to just approve it and figure it out later, okay? It's not the right answer for a user to do that, but statistically, they're more likely to do that. So these attackers know that. And the other thing is the social engineering. That's a big one. Like, if I can call you and say, look, it's me, I'm the person you know and trust, and I can trick you into thinking I'm someone and say, you're about to get a push to your phone. It's coming from me. I need you to approve that. Cool. Some of the biggest attacks I have seen are that exactly. So you literally get the person to go ahead and push it anyway.
Yeah, yeah. You know, now you talk about that, I was reading the other day, and I was like looking at some stuff on ransomware, and they do have this thing that they get access into the system, they compromise an identity, and then they start doing recon, and then they get an admin account. For whatever reason, they're successful with that. Of course, they do what they deploy ransomware, they start encrypting a bunch of files, and they start doing a bunch of things as well. But then at the same time, when that is happening, and I know, and this goes along with what you mentioned, like, people having dinner at night, and maybe they get this thing, and they're like, let me just approve this thing. Probably is, some application that I have running on the back end. And what happens is that the attackers are also pushing DDoS attacks, just to make sure that the IT team or the security team is like freaking out about the DDoS attack while the encryption is happening. So it is a distraction.
Like they're
That's what.
hiding their tracks. The classic thing of like, I need to sneak in. Let me make a disturbance over here. So you look over there and then I'll sneak in. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty crazy, and that is something that is also happening a lot. I was reading just about it the other day. But yeah, interesting. Now, Mike, we went over some of our organizations failed. I think we, at the end of that section, we said just make sure you have your securities up. You have either if you use Duo, if you use Microsoft MFA, or any other MFA product that you continuously trust or continuously verify trust for the device and the user. Now, what else can we do? What else can we do, going to the other section to start defending the identity? Like, we talked about the issues, we talked about how we're getting attacked, why companies are failing, but how companies can do this. Like, how can they protect themselves?
Yeah. Like now we're into the part of the conversation where it's like the action items. We've talked about how people get attacked, why, how difficult it is just to be a user trying to do your job and align with company policy, not push that accept when you're under an attack. In terms of action items for defending identity, obviously MFA in place. The first thing I would throw out there is, again, the reminder that the attackers assume you have MFA in place at this point. It is 2026. They know that all the big organizations of the world, most of the medium, and ideally everyone has MFA in place to protect your precious resources and your users. So don't be fooled into, well, I should just say be aware when you are evaluating an MFA solution, regardless of vendor, and it says free MFA. Okay. MFA is a baseline. Be aware of when you're evaluating a solution of, if an attacker knows I have MFA, what are the additional security layers, identity specific, that are protecting me here? One of the simplest, again, like the resistant MFA, the phishing-resistant MFA. So as you said earlier, a good example, Andres, is typing in a code on your phone. Like, the attacker going to log into your company's OneDrive account, they stole your credentials. They're at the final step, which is MFA. They are looking at a code that says 1596, and that code needs to be typed in on the user's phone. The user's phone, they're sitting down to dinner with their family. They don't know what that code is, so that attack never happened. But like, those is an example. What is it beyond just having MFA that's in place? So I would say the first thing is evaluate the beyond basic MFA considerations. Be aware of social engineering attacks. Like, do you have something in place, maybe like to prevent that? Biometrics is a big one here, Andres. Duo has a cool new integration with company. Have you heard of like the Duo Persona integration, which is really pretty new?
Yeah, no, I haven't heard of
Yeah.
that
So
one.
Persona, for anyone listening here, just look at Persona, Persona, just like it sounds. You'll see reports on like Forrester, and they're in the Gartner quadrant and all that. But this is a company leading the way in passwordless verification. So to defend myself as an action item, I'm thinking about use cases that commonly are used to override basic MFA. As an example, there was a major company, everyone knows this one. It's in Vegas that got hacked for a password reset that was protected by MFA. But the attacker called in, was able to convince the person working at the company that I need a password reset. It really is me. I need to reset my password. They were able to bypass MFA. Persona is an integration with Cisco Duo that says we're not going to involve passwords at all to reset your identity, to reset your access. And it's very nice. Like, it's going to take an image of your face and ask you to turn left and right and verify that it truly is you. And it can compare that to like a government issued device to perform that password reset. So there's no password involved. Password attacks are gone. I'm able to reset my access, proving my identity without having to give anyone a password or re-enter a password. But things like that are the action items that customers should be thinking about when they are overcoming these ever-growing threats. A lot of them, again, being social engineering attacks.
That's pretty cool. I was gonna say, and this sounds probably like an offline type of procedure whenever you get a call from a help desk. I was also reading this the other day that like an offline procedure, let's say, somebody's calling you from the IT department, or somebody's calling the IT department to reset that password. Like, how do you make sure that the person that is calling is the right person, and how do you authenticate them offline? So this is really, really, really good. Like, I like it.
Yeah.
I think I saw it, and that was pretty cool. I don't remember it was called Persona, but we will make
Yeah.
sure that we add it to the show notes as well.
Because we always talk about like the users have always been the weakest link in the security chain, not by their own fault. It's difficult to keep up with. Like, think of your example, training that person at the help desk on the conditions in which they should authorize a reset. Like, that can be a lot. And if you're under a social engineering attack, the person trying to get the reset is going to be putting serious pressure on you, talking about all the money that is being lost and how they're the CEO of the company, and you could lose your job if you don't quickly reset this password. So there's a lot going on. So having a way to safely and securely reset someone's identity quickly and without user friction and without violating any compliance is so critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And I know we have other things. You mentioned about the conditional access. There's also the identity behavior analytics, and for impossible travel, abnormal authentication, unusual token usage, and just suspicious admin activity. That's another one. We get to hear from a lot of customers about privileged access controls. And this is nothing more than flipping the firewall on people, or in this case, flipping the zero trust on people. And it's just making sure that provide the access that that person needs, make sure that you isolate some of the administration workflows, and of course, require that stronger authentication for high risk actions, like, for those things that you mentioned. I think that is something that should be in everybody's mind today, just to defend their identity. And what else can we add to that, Mike?
I
Sorry.
mean, I think just fundamentally, attackers have just changed the way they are doing their attacks. Like, it used to be sophisticated attacks to sneak through a firewall, like very difficult attacks. Now, I mean, Why would an attacker need to do that if they can simply steal your identity and escalate their privilege? Like, if I can, again, if I can convince you to hit that MFA push, man, I'm going.
Yeah, so somebody's calling you with a baby crying next to him and adding pressure to that. Like we've
Please,
seen that.
please unlock this. I only have 15 minutes. I'm meeting with the CEO and I've got my baby here. And that's some serious pressure. I mean, there's a lot of like, these attacks have a lot of fear involved too. And like pressure that humans are designed to feel, like fear I might lose my job if I don't do this, fear that I might lose money, fear that the person who is requesting my help might get harmed or they might lose their job if I don't reset this for them. This is why, to your opening point, the identity is the new perimeter. If you can get that privileged identity, I mean, that's the crown jewel now.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. And we get amazed, but these are things that are happening. So, Mike, just to wrap up, I guess we talked about a lot of things. We talked about how the identity governance and administration, that's a pretty cool term that I want to start looking up. Some of the attacks that we see, some of our customers also receiving those and seeing those out in the wild. Things that companies are doing just where they're failing and how we can, companies can defend their identity. And what would you add as, probably your closing thoughts, just making sure that we wrap this one up about identity.
My closing thoughts here would be, please put on basic MFA if you've not at this point. And if you have MFA in place, look into hardening that MFA. Just Google phishing-resistant MFA, or like do a basic Google search if you're listening into this of most common ways people get hacked when MFA is already implemented. That's what your attackers are doing. It's, again, we say this with security. It's not an if, it's a when that you're going to get hacked. So be aware that identity really needs focus. That's a place customers need to invest their time and their resources, because look at passwordless. Just be aware that your customer, your attackers, again, they're expecting you to have MFA. So be ready for it. Talk to someone who is a trusted security person. Andres would be a good example, myself, or whoever it may be, to figure out the updated threat landscape when it comes to identity. Maybe another Google search, look into that identity governance and administration. Start looking at ways to make sure your user identities are safeguarded. Come up with your worst case scenario. Maybe it's that help desk ticket with someone resetting their password. Make sure that these worst case scenarios, like, you have a way to protect yourself from them.
Yeah, that's definitely right. I guess my closing thoughts on this one are going to be very similar. Just recommending customers out there just to make sure that they implement not only that MFA as you mentioned, Mike, and just keep continuing verifying the trust of the devices of the users. One thing that resonates a lot with me is that whenever a credential is stolen and an attacker goes into your system, logs in, you're not gonna get any alerts. Like, that person is already in there. That's it. It's just a regular process, something that was supposed to happen. Of course, the stealing of the credentials, not, but that attacker has your username, your password, and your credentials, and it's already in. How do you know?
What a powerful statement that is, and something to think about. Like, someone with your username and password, your organization would essentially have no idea theoretically, unless you put safeguards like this.
Exactly.
So,
It's a regular event.
yeah, just that's a good way to think about that. Is that's not even an event, an alert that would generate without proper controls in place.
Exactly. Well, this was really awesome, Mike. I hope everybody that everyone that is going to listen the episode, watch the episode. Hopefully, it resonates with them. I'm not sure if what do we have on the pipeline for the next episode that we're.
What is
I'm gonna check
next?
real quick right here, and this is probably and we're thinking about I'm looking at it. Is it episode 3? Yes. It's on probably ransomware. Like probably we talk about,
Ransomware. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is going to be a good conversation here. Oh,
yeah, probably.
Andres, you want to tell
Yes.
everybody about the new domain?
Oh yes. So yeah, we have security in 45.com. There's already a website built for it. It is pretty cool. One of the nice things about what happens with the website is that every episode gets like the player, so people don't have to go to Apple if they don't want to go to Apple Podcast and download, or Spotify, or whatever the case is. So we're gonna be in a lot of places. We see the website. The website has that player, and the show notes are a little bit expanded with the help of AI. So it looks pretty cool. If you have the opportunity, go check it out. It's securityin45.com.
I love that you've got, I know people consume the show in different ways, like watching it, through YouTube, but I think a lot of people are, obviously using like the podcast format of it just while you're on a walk through the neighborhood or at the gym or whatever, just to listen in. So all of those links, I love that you put them all from the single website, securityin45.com. Well done.
Yeah, no, to do that, man. So this was fun. I guess we'll see you again during the week and for the next episode, man. Thank you so much.